now!
Hey everybody, welcome back. I am Wayward Dreams. This is my first speed paint video of the year. I'm cheating. I actually painted this last year. Don't you feel swindled? Anyway, so this is a very special 3-part series that I hope that you like. I have done this in honor of Final Fantasy. So if any of you guys recognize where my logo comes from or anything that I've done that has like this kind of aesthetic, this is why I'm doing this. This is fan service for you. I figured I'd tackle a couple of different things throughout the series, and the first one I'm going to probably talk to you a little bit about things like using reference. Now, I don't always have my reference up in my frames when I'm doing my other speed paints. This is not a speed paint. This is just sped up. It's actually sped up to all holy hell. So I'm going to try and keep up with myself here. The first thing that I ended up doing was I picked a background that I liked. I ended up with a city from Final Fantasy X that is always super striking. And the first thing that you'll notice that I did was pull like a perspective line grid from the actual city and applied it to the picture that I was working on. Now, most of this is going to be covered up because I want Ifrit and Orin to be pretty big in frame, but I wanted to go through painting the entire city because I think that you get a little bit more depth when you know exactly what's there instead of just, I don't know, arbitrarily tracing the parts that you can see. So in order to get a really good feel of the city, I wanted to kind of get really far in there. I do suck at this immensely. Like, me and architecture are not good friends, so this has been a very interesting challenge for me. And I'm not going to lie about that. I don't make good friends with perspective and buildings, but I really wanted to try to do this and do a good job of it. A lot of this is just like trying to fill out values, as I usually do. A lot of the stuff in the middle, it's also dark because it's dark in the picture, but it's dark too so that I don't have to care terribly much about it. Now, this next thing that you've seen pop up, actually, my wonderful husband did in fact make this piece of reference in Poser, and it's an old version of Poser, but I find it works just fine for my purposes because I don't like cheating. Reference isn't cheating, but you can get to the point where I've got kind of like a cheat spectrum. This is further down on it, and what I wanted to do was have him make something for me that really emphasized the force perspective of especially the difference in size and the sheer massiveness of Ifrit towering over him. But I still wanted Orin to look imposing in frame because otherwise why have Orin in the frame at all? Because if he's just a little twig, then, you know, you're not afraid of him either. But I wanted Orin to be the real threat with Ifrit just kind of enforcing behind him. I can't tell you what number of rendering that particular piece was. It was done at least twice to completion, sadly, because I realized the first time that I said, yeah, that's cool, the camera wasn't where it should have been for it to have given the right effect. So my husband went back in and fixed it for me because he loves me and doesn't want to kill me. And at this point, I've gone over, here I've got like Ifrit's face going on. I was juggling with a few different versions of him. I really like the FF10 version of him, but I wanted to include some other elements from some of the other ones because there's so many really cool versions of Ifrit. In fact, there's like amazing versions of pretty much every one of the summons. It's really hard to pick, so I kind of just threw in some other elements in there with the Final Fantasy X main base. One of the biggest things that you'll notice throughout this whole process is that I've got 3 separate main layer groups, and right now they're only 3 separate layers. One is the background, so I can work on the city completely separate, and Ifrit is his very own layer, and Orin is his very own layer. The reason for that is because you can manipulate each of these things without completely screwing up your whole composition, because if you start trying to cut things out of a painting that you're doing all together, it doesn't work. You're going to end up messing up all of your pixels. You're going to have to fill in gaps. It's just ridiculous. You can't manipulate things if you find out that your composition isn't working for you. Can't change perspective very well, so that is why that. And in order to keep that separation going, you're going to have to make sure that once you've added any other layers on top of your current ones that you're working, you want to select all of the layers and put them into a folder called a layer group, and you'll want to name them appropriately. I get rather messy with that because I don't name things properly sometimes, but I tend to know where I'm going. It's like my backpack was always a mess in school, but for some reason I knew where all of my assignments were, and if I organized it too much, then for some dumb reason I totally had no idea where anything was. You'll find your own way of doing things, but I really recommend that you keep things in these layered groups. That way you can mess with each part of your composition separately without messing up your whole thing. And the other reason I wanted to do this is showing you guys exactly how much I really do use reference and why it's a great idea and not a cheat. You'll notice that I'll be pulling up several things every now and again, and as much as you might think that you know a thing, like you could have wandered around in this Final Fantasy city for half the game if you wanted, and you would still not know where everything is. You just think you know. You might think that you know all of the details that are on Auron's outfit, or you might think that you know the structure of a Ifrit. You're just not. So having things up there that you can continually look at and reference back to that you aren't actively tracing is probably one of the best things that you can do. If you've got two monitors, pull it up on the separate monitor that you can keep looking back at it or pulling up new stuff that doesn't affect your canvas. But if you can't do that, like right now I can't activate two monitors, open them all up in separate tabs inside of your program. All of them allow you to do this. Clip Studio Paint has probably the best way of doing so. But once you open them up and pull them out, you can actually group all of your reference together into the navigator window, and then you can set your navigator window to where you can have them fit the navigator no matter how big you make the navigator, or you can disregard that and zoom in whenever you see it. So this is the same city, same perspective. I just wanted to get a little bit better of an idea of the color that's going into this. And for this, I have exited Clip Studio Paint. I don't think I ever go back in, and I've gone into Photoshop, and Photoshop is so much better when it comes to layering and effects. I just really can't recommend it enough. If you're in a different program, just trust me, it's not as scary as it looks. You just have to kind of get into it. So at this point, I've laid down some very, very basic color on a color layer, and I'm starting to kind of try and play with the fire around the creep. You're gonna see me do a bunch of stupid stuff right now, and stupid stuff doesn't have to stay stupid. It's just there to, like, keep your body and your brain moving about the subject, and you get great ideas from it, even if you don't ever end up keeping it, which obviously I didn't keep most of this fire. And here you'll see why it is that it's a great idea to have it freed on a separate layer, because all I had to do was select the area around him, invert selection, and now there's no way that I'm coloring outside of him. And that's really, really, really helpful when you're trying to keep your lines very clean. I know some people do the clipping mask thing. I've got to explore that further, but right now this is just kind of what works for me, and I don't mind the edges being a little fuzzier because I do like that painter feel. Now we're going to do the same thing with Oren. Just very, very basic color. You don't have to go super nuts. And looks like that's where we are ending this one for today. And the next time I'm going to go over something just a little bit different. This one's kind of a blitzkrieg of information, I know, but that's because starting any piece is always where the brunt of your work and where advice comes in. And the second video that I'm going to do is a little bit of a departure. I've got some interesting advice for young digital artists, and I do find that it applies to traditional artists as well, but it's geared more towards people that are doing digital art because of how people think about, like, computers and technology. So hopefully you get something out of it. I've really thought about these tenets quite a lot, and I apply them all the time because whether or not I fail at them, they're some of the best things to keep in mind on the constant. So I hope you guys had a happy new year. Remember, the raffle is still going on. I'm not going to repeat it right now. I've said it in a lot of videos, and I'll leave the description, blah blah blah. I will not leave the description. I will leave the rules in the description below. So if you want to participate, then go check out the rules. And in the meantime, I hope you guys had a happy new year, and we will see you next time.
Acceptable.